Community of Jesus Crucified, or perhaps even for diocesan priests in the rectory, but not for lay people because their life is so chaotic with the world. Precisely because of that chaotic aspect of the world and the life that they live, they need it more than I do, or than the Carmelites. My life is controlled much by our overall rule of life of our religious community. And so the bell rings at a certain time for rising and for preparation for Mass, for work times, for the meals and for Vespers, night prayer, lights out. We have that controlled very much what we call an horarium. And so religious move according to that. And so they need a plan of life, but they don't need it nearly as much as, for example, a diocesan priest would need it. A diocesan priest lives alone often, maybe with an associate. He has the responsibilities and has to be very flexible to the needs of you, the people, entrusted to his care. And yet, because he's alone, he doesn't have the help, for example, of 5 or 6 other priests living with him, all moving at the same time to the same spiritual exercise. He has to be very disciplined and write down a rule of life about when he's going to pray his Liturgy of the Hours. 5 times a day, a priest is obliged under pain of sin to pray the Liturgy of the Hours. And so when is he going to do it? And because his day is very open to interruptions and responsibilities, he has to be diligent about setting out specific times and trying to stick to a plan of life. So a diocesan priest would need a plan of life more than I do, but a lay person even more than a diocesan priest because of the nature of their lives. So this is, I find, one of the significant means, it's an external, secondary means to sanctity that is so often neglected. And because of this, when persons may come to me making a retreat, or even they may want to come for spiritual direction and speak about the spiritual life, about becoming a saint, it's mostly just that, speaking about the spiritual life, speaking about becoming a saint, but not really dealing with the reality of becoming a saint or the reality of prayer, because the person is not consistent in his or her exercises, simply because they've never sat down and took a moment of clarity, of time, prayerfully before God, to lay out their week and say each day, when am I going to go to Mass? When am I going to pray? Make my meditation. When am I going to say my rosary? What days of the week will I say the rosary? Will it be every day? Will it be Monday, Wednesday, Friday? When will I go to Mass? Is it going to be 2 or 3 times a week? Is it going to be every day? Is it going to be just 1 extra Mass a week? When am I going to make my meditation? When am I going to do my examination of conscience? And so to look at the day with like a spreadsheet and block out those times, prayerfully look over it, and then meet with your confessor, with a priest in spiritual direction, and look at it to see if it fits your state of life. Because a lay person is not a religious is not a diocesan priest is not a lay person. So they'll have a very different kind of plan of life, and we'll have to keep it with a different priority and a particular spirit about keeping it. But this is very important. If you do a plan of life and keep it with you for about 2 weeks and get in the habit of doing it, then prayer, being consistent every day over a period of months and then of years and then of decades, you make rapid progress in the spiritual life. Then an examination of conscience, which started to be sporadic at the beginning, becomes consistent. You'll make rapid progress and much more efficacious confessions in moving toward the spiritual life, to sanctity. Going to Mass regularly over many, many years in that rhythm, then you have a greater opportunity to become saints through the divine kiss of Holy Communion and bring in your sacrifices to unite with Christ's sacrifice on the cross at daily Mass or Masses during the week. So that's a plan of life. The second thing I want to speak about with regard to is spiritual grouping, or spiritual groups, or spiritual friends, spiritual friendships. St. Teresa of Avila, in the book of her life, says that this one means to sanctity has done so much good for her that she would have been cast into hell numerous times if it had not been for holy, like-minded people that she could speak with, that could say she was lazy when she was lazy, she was crazy when she was crazy. This is to keep our feet on the ground. Too often in the spiritual life, we get interior, and then the devil can mess with our emotions, the imaginations, our mind, and we're not speaking about what's going on, and we don't have the support of others. So our friends, a good spiritual friend, can keep our feet on the ground. In the spiritual life, a person that begins living the spiritual life frequently can't find adequate spiritual direction. Priests are so busy, we don't have enough competent spiritual directors around to be able to see the people needing it or requesting it. But a spiritual group, 2 or 3 close friends that are trying to become saints, that love and care about you, that will help you, that will share with you their lives, and are open to listen to you in your difficulties. Father Fidelis at the Cursillo years ago said, a man will learn to love one or two men in a very intimate way during the course of his life. And this is very important. For me, since the time I was about 18, 19, made the Cursillo, it was a spiritual grouping, 2 or 3 friends that I met that we stuck together for many, many years that has helped me to persevere and to grow in holiness. Sanctity begets sanctity. We never find a saint in the church in isolation. Always there's others that were around them that were able to influence them and walk the walk with them in order for them to become the saints that we too are called to live.
Thank you, Father Champagne. Coming up next, in a conversation with Bishop Michael Jarrell, Monsignor Richard Green interviews Bishop Jarrell about Labor Day.
Good morning, and thank you for being with us. It's always good to have you with Bishop Michael Jarrell of the Diocese of Lafayette. Bishop, thanks for being with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Monday, September the 3rd, is Labor Day. It's not a religious holiday or holy day, but labor has been the subject of church teaching for over a century. And so, Bishop, what does the church have to say on the subject of labor?
Well, Labor Day is about the wage earner, those we might call laborers, those who are paid by the hour. And sometimes we distinguish this group from management and from ownership. So the purpose of Labor Day is to recognize the importance of labor and the rights of laborers and the rights of workers. The church began reflecting on this subject of labor in the 19th century with the rise of the modern industrial nation. It was a new type of society. And the Holy Father, Pope Leo XIII, in 1891, published an encyclical letter entitled Rerum Novarum, of New Things. And in it, he discussed the role of labor and especially some parts about the rights of working people.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bishop, without going into the whole history of Catholic social teaching, what are some things that the Catechism of the Catholic Church says about labor?
Sure. I think the first thing to note is that the Catechism says that work is a duty. When you read the Catechism of the Catholic Church, it quotes St. Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, "If anyone will not work, let him not eat." And of course, this sounds very harsh, but it should be noted that St. Paul said that those who will not work, in other words, the will is involved, it's a choice. People who could be working but choose not to work. Those words should not be applied to those who cannot find work. It should not be applied to those who are impaired in some way from working. It's the question of those who are simply lazy he was talking about. Also, the Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us that work can be redemptive. In a way, it is something that is good for human beings and sanctifying. The Catechism reminds us that Jesus was a worker. He worked as a carpenter for many years. We know that he did not begin his public ministry until he was about 30 years old. So he spent many years working. And of course, the church also celebrates on May 1st the feast of St. Joseph the Worker, all showing us that work has an important part in human life. Another thing we don't often think about, but that the Catechism brings out, is that our work is an opportunity to serve others and to evangelize. First, to serve others. People, for example, who have a grocery store or work in a grocery store are providing a real service to other people by making these goods available. And so with those who build houses or make cars, all of these things are of service to the community and to other people. But we don't always think of the opportunity to evangelize. The workplace is a place where people can give good example and give witness to their faith in Jesus Christ. We know that that is the distinctive role of the laity in the church, and that is to bring Christ into the places where they are. It might be the priest who's giving witness on Sunday morning, but he cannot be in every office, in every classroom, in every farm, in every workplace. It is the laity who bring Christ into those places by their witness, by their example, and sometimes by the very work they perform. So work has many dimensions to it, and on Labor Day we try to raise all of those different dimensions.
Well, Bishop, over the years, labor unions have been controversial at times. What does the Catechism of the Catholic Church say about labor unions?
Well, the Catechism says that laborers have the right to form unions. I know that is very controversial today, but that basic right remains. However, the Church does not condone excesses. Sometimes, in some places, we have seen extortion and violence and unreasonable demands that strangle a local economy, and certainly those things are not condoned. But the Church does maintain that basic right to form unions. Also, the Catechism says that strikes are morally legitimate when every other means has been exhausted, when it cannot be avoided. So again, a basic right, but it is nuanced.
Okay. Well, Bishop, unemployment is a major problem in our country today. What does the Catechism say about unemployment?
I can give a direct quotation. Unemployment almost always wounds its victim's dignity and threatens the equilibrium of his life. It brings harm to the person and to his family as well. So it's simply a way of saying what we all know, that we take unemployment very seriously. And therefore, society and governments are obliged to do what they can to have an economy which brings employment to people.
Bishop, what can we do? What can members of the audience do to address unemployment?
Yeah, well, that's a harder question because it seems like forces are at work that are kind of beyond our control. We can, of course, pray for a stronger economy. We can fund our local charities which care for people during their times of need. But one factor at work in this recent few years has been the housing bubble, and we know that one of the causes there can be traced to human vices like greed and fraud. So the more that we practice virtue and the more that we hold other people to Christian virtues, these have impact in our economy as well. And so we could pray for the virtues in business. I think that would be a great help.
Well, Bishop, thank you. Do you have any closing thoughts related to Labor Day?
Well, I remember a saying that sums up much of Catholic social teaching: an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Workers, owners, and managers all have responsibilities in our economy. There again, Christian virtue can go a long way toward a healthy economy.
Thank you, Bishop Gerald and Monsignor Green. We pray this program has allowed you to grow closer to God and the Catholic faith. Due to special programming, next Sunday on KATC TV3, the Sunday Mass and Tell the People will air 30 minutes earlier. Next Sunday only on TV3, we air from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. So please join us next week on this station as we tell the people about the Diocese of Lafayette and the good news of our Catholic faith.